welcome everybody, and thank you so much for being here. I was telling Jesse on the way up, I'm terrified and excited at the same time to be talking with you. But it's a wonderful group, and it's a great topic. And as we were just told, just being proactive about thinking about your career and what happens next. It's like eating a healthy diet. You always want to be doing it. And most of us are worried that, our jobs may be moved, our jobs may be eliminated, and the workplace is increasingly a transitory place. And I'm going to give you some numbers on that. First, I want to tell you, I've been fired a lot. In fact, I've been fired more times than anybody I know. And I used to be embarrassed about it. But then I realized, in a joking way, this is something I do very well. But I also thought about, I've been hired a lot. And that's kind of part of the story. And as I thought about it, I shouldn't have been hired for a lot of the jobs I was hired for in the beginning, or arguably it was somebody was taking a big risk. And that's kind of part of the story. And as I thought about it, and also having been a headhunter for 4 years, I've seen a lot of searches, a lot of people in transition. I've seen a lot of people hired who were not the best candidates, and people having lost their jobs or downsized, etc., for no fault of their own. And I just realized that maybe there was something to say about this, that part of the problem is what we do to ourselves when an opportunity is lost. You're fired, you're downsized, you didn't get the promotion, you really wanted a job, you didn't get it. It all kind of hits our ego. And it makes us feel bad about ourselves. In some cases, and I remember feeling this way myself, I felt like I'm a disappointment to my family. And you're worried about the financial situation and so forth. And people would say to me, and my friends and some of you are here, say, Beth, you're going to land on your feet. You always do. But that's not what was going through my mind. I was scared. And so I realized that this is something that a lot of people feel, but we don't talk about getting fired. We don't talk about getting downsized because it's sort of this taboo. Nobody really wants to put that out there, and they don't really know what to say about it. And frankly, when you're looking for another job, you don't want to say a whole lot about it. But I think it's important to talk about because when you lose your job or you miss that opportunity or you're worried about it, you can feel embarrassment and shame that really puts you in exactly the wrong place for getting your next opportunity. And what you really want when that happens, or when you're worried about it happening, or you're worried about there are changes in the workplace, what you really want is you're coming into the world as your best self, your most positive self. The old saying that when you smile at the world smiles back. It's the same with your energy, and it's the same in the professional world. And I realized, even though those bumps were painful to me and embarrassing, that it turned out they were the best things that ever happened to me. And I think, in my view, by definition, if you are downsized, laid off, fired, it is by definition the best thing that has ever happened to you until that point. And why is that? It's that a door closed and a bunch of new doors are open. But what we need to do is get ourselves in the mind frame to embrace the opportunity and start walking to those doors. And so today I want to talk a little bit about getting over the pain of being fired, but also how to prepare yourself to walk through those new doors that are opening, and how to establish, let's call it a diet of healthy habits, so that when those changes do come, whether you're fired or whether you're just fed up with your job, or whether you see things changing, you want to get into a healthy set of habits that inoculate you against the inevitable bumps that happen in a career. And of course, as our executive director referred to, the evolution of the workplace is just speeding all of this up. So it's becoming a bigger issue, not a smaller one. I'd like to talk about, why it happens, why you get fired or downsized. I think we start out thinking that, like, life is fair, or the workplace is fair. If you're doing a good job, if you're smart, you're showing up on time, you're turning in your work, you're good with people, that you should be good to go. But it's not like that. First of all, the workplace is not fair. It's a collection of people. And like any collection of people, they have their good points, but there is inevitably toxicity in every workplace, and there's a downside. And what I've come to realize is that there are also survivors in every organization, and some of them have just learned how to operate in the system. And if they see something they don't like, and you're that thing, you're a disruptor. You're there to change things. You've been asked to improve things. Though that organism of people, just like a body, will surround you like an amoeba and push out the new thing that it recognizes as a foreign object. And that's what happens to many people in the workplace. So, this idea that, what's wrong with me? What did I do wrong? I got on the wrong side of him. Why didn't I say this instead of that? I shouldn't have asked for more money. That's happened to me. Some of you in this room that have been with me during those times, you ask for more money, that can be the beginning of bad things. So it's wrong to think it's your fault when you lose your job, or you get passed over, or you didn't get the job you wanted. It's just the workplace, and the workplace is a mixed bag. I was talking with Jessie, my niece, this morning, and saying, if you really estimate the number of people who love their jobs, at least here in Washington, my guess is it's less than 50%. Really love their jobs. It may be more like 10 or 20%. When I meet someone who says, I love what I do, it's just so noticeable, because most people don't. So think what all that buildup of toxicity of people like showing up, getting it done, just trying to stay out of trouble. Just think what that creates in the workplace in terms of the health of this kind of social organism that the workplace is. It's not good. So if you happen to be on the wrong side of where some of that kind of fear, everyone's kind of fearful about the job security at the highest levels, including Jamie Dimon. And I was reading about a guy named Adam Newman who's out at WeWork. WeWork is a super successful thing. This was the photo that they put in the New York Times story about him. It happens to anybody, and when your downsides are out, you feel torn in half. Your identity is affected. But what I'm telling you is that it doesn't necessarily have. It's not necessarily your fault at all. It is just the way the workplace is. So the first thing is, if you're embarrassed or feeling bad or a disappointment when that happens to you, drop it. It may have nothing, I mean, it's not like it doesn't have anything to do with you, but it could be a badge of honor that you've lost your job. And by the way, part of the pain of the experience is that, you know, the definition of emotional pain is you're learning at an uncomfortably fast pace, right? Let's say your partner broke up with you. Oh man, that hurts. But later you say, oh God, thank God I dodged that bullet. You're learning at an uncomfortably fast pace. That's what emotional pain is. And so that's great. You're learning really fast when you get fired. And the key is to move through that to the positive development that it is. And that's the beginning of good things. I do want to talk about a couple of times I've been fired because, I mean, look, I just want people to kind of throw this monkey off their back when it hits. The worst time was I was the CEO of a small trade association, and I thought, CEO, I have it made. Like once you're a CEO, like you never go back. You crossed into, the good times, the pay, the prestige. So 18 months in, and by the way, I was a first-time CEO, and the organization had kind of been driven into the ditch by the previous CEO who had been there, 25 years, something like that. They had a little office condo in Virginia that was infested with flying termites, and the roof leaked, and the staff was down to one person, and she was really angry. The website was terrible, the accounts were a mess, letters were coming in from the Justice Department because the nonprofit tax filings hadn't been done right. But I'm the CEO, and I got to work. I actually like this. I mean, this was I like to build things and fix things, and I was meeting the cable guys to hook up the phones, got a better office down here, downtown, where we should have been, started hiring people. Our meeting attendance was way up. The books, we went from declining revenue to budget surplus, sold the condo in Virginia, more money in the bank, created an endowment for the organization. I just thought, I'm doing great. And I asked for more money because I wasn't at par with my peers, and I just thought, I kind of deserve it. So my board chair and the treasurer were coming in for a meeting. They didn't tell me why, but it was generally the time of year to plan for the next year. And I was excited. I went to the gym at like 6 o'clock in the morning. I wore my favorite robin's egg blue suit. It was springtime. And I made sure I picked up some fruit and pastries, and made sure that I was going to take care of them, and I was ready, and they came. It was about 9:30 in the morning, and all my team was in the office. We had sort of an open plan, so I was really proud of them. They were working away, and the board chair and the treasurer and the vice chair, I think, came in. And I showed them into the conference room. We had a conference room that was a separate room. And I was asking everyone, how about some coffee, tea, what would you like? And the treasurer says, shut the door. And he was kind of an abrupt guy, so I was like, that's a little strange. I was like, oh, sure, and I walked to shut the door. These are my bosses. And the chair, very nice woman, pulls some papers out of a folder, and her hands are just shaking like a leaf. Like it's practically making noise. She's so nervous and upset, and she starts reading from a piece of paper. You've served here 18 months, but we're going in a different direction. We'd like you to sign these papers. You'll have X amount of severance, and it was sort of legal language, and it was like, I just, you start to have sort of an out-of-body experience, like, oh my God, I'm getting fired, and you kind of, I couldn't believe it, but I sort of did believe it. And I honestly, I was also thinking to myself, you're stupid. I mean, this is not going to look good. But of course, I'm just taking it all in. Thankfully, I've been fired a few times before. So, when you've gone through this, there's one channel of your brain that's listening to what they have to say. There's another channel that's kind of watching them because, it's not really fun for them. Like a couple of them were just looking down. Like nobody likes to do this, right? But a third channel of my brain was on, I tried. You guys. Truth is, I didn't have a whole lot of admiration for the leadership of this group, and of course that's probably has to do with why I was fired, right? I wasn't doing the caring and the feeding of the board, which I didn't know, I didn't realize was sort of job number one in a thing like that. I just thought I was doing I was like fixing the car so it could drive again, But anyway, so this happened. It was very humiliating, and my first phone call, I think, was to Lauren Crawford, who's sitting there, and she said, what? You're kidding me, and something like that, which was, of course, it was exactly the right thing to say. Thank you, Lauren. And they said that there was other weirdness, like they said, you, and poor Sally, I shouldn't say that name, rattling the paper saying, you can clean out your desk now or we'll box up your stuff. And, my first question to them was, why? And they wouldn't answer. Well, no, we decide to go in a different direction, and that was the only answer, which is of course, is part of the torture of it, right? Just tell me. But that's not how it works these days. And these days, so these days, HR is so weird, you can get frog marched out. So, this was a little more gentle. I said, well, can I at least tell my team? I had hired them all, and I love my team. They said, your team has left the building. What they had told my team, I guess, because I found out, okay, everybody go to Starbucks across the street, and they didn't tell them either what was going on. So it had its weirdness, but it was so weird that it kind of helped me in that moment to feel like, let me just get my stuff out of here. And I packed up my desk. I didn't have a whole lot of stuff, and it was weird and new enough that by the time I left, I was just shaking their hands and thanking them and wishing them luck, because part of me knew that the reality was I had been doing a great job. I had turned around the organization, but they had had enough of it, and that's legit. And going back to my sort of the comment I made about my sort of lack of admiration for the leadership, my mother, my dear departed mother, said it best, and after she said it right away. She said, Beth, it was never a fit, and they treated you pretty well on the way out the door, and that was true. Now, had I thought about, I'm going to do this for a year and a half and then get the heck out, that would have been about right, actually, for me in that job. But that's not how you think about it when your cheese is getting moved. You're like, what? You're firing me? After these glowing performance reviews, and I asked for a raise, and I actually think that having asked for a raise was sort of part of the souring of the relationship. But that's just another learning experience. I want to talk about one that I stayed in that I shouldn't have stayed in. So then actually as a result of that humiliation, which I did to myself, right? It wasn't humiliating. I mean, I did that to myself, but I took it as a big bruise to my ego. And you have to, it's kind of like, it's hard to explain that, like, oh, why did you leave? But we'll get into like telling your story in a second. But, so I was hired by a very large commercial bank, next, which probably on its face, for those of you who know me, is like, really, Beth? But I did it because I wanted to show the previous organization that I wasn't just going to be like pushed out of the industry basically by them. I kind of wanted to teach them a lesson. Probably not the smartest thing. Because why? I was just like putting myself in the new wrong box. To teach them a lesson, not smart. But these are the things we do when we don't like clear it out emotionally, right? It was baggage I was carrying. And in the new role, and I like the fact that I was in a whole new different landscape. I mean, I like new things. I like meeting new sets of people and kind of figuring out what needs to be done and doing it. So in that sense, it was good. But my boss at the bank didn't think I should be hired. I think she was forced by her boss to hire me. And so it just was, it was just wrong from the beginning. And she basically, I mean, she wanted to push me out. It felt like from almost the beginning. And I now understand that, but there I was hired, I had been fired from the previous thing. I just really didn't want that to happen again. And so I was determined also, she was mean, and I was determined not to let her push me out. But, the reason I'm telling this story is that, so I hung in there, and it was like, it was raining every day in that office. Like, I learned to come in with a raincoat so that, figuratively, so that I wouldn't let her toxicity and her negativity toward me, I couldn't do anything right. But I was determined. I started watching movies about the convents in Ireland in the 1800s where they tortured women for getting pregnant or looking at their uncle the wrong way, and it was Arbeit macht frei in these places, except, you never got free. But it was just, and the meanness towards these young women, I sort of realized, oh, it has nothing to do with me. That's just the way this place is, and I learned not to let it bother me. I hopefully also learned how to be a better boss. Katie is now on my team. She's really the test of that. But so you learn these different things in the workplace. But as I look back on it, we do a lot of bad things to ourselves that hold us in place. We lead with our fear. I'm afraid. We make decisions out of fear. Oh, I won't be able to do that. I won't be able to make that transition. What if it fails? What if we sort of keep ourselves so limited because of our minds. And that's the part that we can change. As you know, you can't change the world, but you can change the way you think about it and change the way you think about yourself and your own possibilities. So let's get into a little bit about what to do when you lose your job, or you're afraid you're going to lose your job, or maybe you're just really fed up. And the irony about all this, talking about how many people are really happy in their jobs, and let's just say, for the sake of argument today, that it's less than 50%. What if, for a lot of people, not that they should be fired, but if it were easier to move in and out of jobs, all of this would be easier for everybody. And we wouldn't be so stuck, and the workplace would probably be a healthier, happier place. So let's talk about what to do when you're in transition or expecting transition. And beyond just getting your head into the right place, which is you have to think about it as this is the best thing that's ever happened to me, by definition, because it's opening up new opportunities. You can't let yourself slide into that, oh, what did I do wrong? I'm not, this is embarrassing. Why can't I, you have to, when you start to feel those feelings, I think you have to say, I'm not going there. Like give yourself an imaginary shot of like morphine, like stop. So, we're not thinking that way. But if you're sort of stewing in it, and by the way, I'm not saying like don't wallow in it for a couple of days. Yeah, feel the pain, but then what? So what I found is starting a creative project that you want to do, whatever it is. Start a website, start a garden, start something creative that you like to do, and ideally that you can talk with other people about. This is like, this is a huge thing, because part of the problem that people have in transition is they get tired of talking about it with people, especially if you're looking for a job. You get tired of having that same conversation. I'm looking for a job, do you have any ideas? If you start something, start a blog in something you're interested in. I started something called the Georgetown Dish because I had been pushed out of a job and I was really in a bad place mentally, and I just didn't even know how to talk with people about it. This was it was the bottom of the economy, 2009, and there were a variety of things that had happened, and I was sort of emotionally devastated. But I started this blog, and then I had this very positive, I was starting a business, and I started to have all kinds of different conversations with people. Like, oh, I'm starting the Georgetown Dish. This was even before it was live. Can I come talk with you about it? Sure. And I heard as you introduced yourselves, there were a lot of journalists in this room and people who write, and I'm telling you, that's the ticket, because everyone wants to talk with a journalist, and it gives you an identity, and it's visible. Here's my blog post about X. Here's my blog post about your restaurant. Here's my blog post about your gallery exhibition. What I did when we started the Georgetown Dish, and I knew a lot of people who were in transition or who felt invisible. They were looking for a job. A big part of the problem about being in transition is you feel invisible, or you don't have the same visibility. You got that piece of your identity that I'm the press officer, or I'm the director. That piece is not part of your identity. But if you have a creative project, and for the writers in the room especially, if you just get something going, you're a working journalist. These days, all you need is a blog and a business card. It helps with your identity. And when we started the Georgetown Dish, the deal was we weren't paying anybody. There was no money in it at the beginning, but we would print a business card for everybody and give them an email address, or I'm not even sure we gave them an email address, but the business card that said the Georgetown Dish. All of a sudden, you have an identity. You can get into an event for free. You write about it. You're visible again. So the creative project should make you visible in a way that you like to be seen. Maybe you're volunteering. But I say creative because we are all creative, and we're all given the ability to be creative when we were born. And it's in being creative that your soul, your spirit is fed and that positive energy comes through. Ideally, work is feeding your spirit. People say thank you. You contribute something. It's the way you're bringing your talent and your skills into the world. So my first piece of advice is do something that's created that makes you visible. And start having conversations with people about it, because it's a form of networking too, and getting out there, and which leads right into the next piece. Networking is everything. Networking is, I mean, it's a cliche, right, that's how people get their jobs these days. But networking is cultivating the garden of people you know. And it's not just literally how you're going to get your job, but it's something that I think is a healthy habit to inoculate yourself against the unpleasant bumps. Meeting new people. The people know who you are and what you do. There's personal networking, like we're doing at this event, and bravo. But there's also maintaining your profile on social media, on LinkedIn, Facebook. I don't do Instagram, I think I should, and not much Twitter. But people come to me all the time to say, Beth, can you help me get my next job? Can you help me get a job? Can you talk with my nephew? Can you speak with my so-and-so that I met? And I always say yes, but I think to myself, why are they coming to me? And I think part of it, I mean, my mother used to say when I was sort of grown, because I always say yes, and I would complain to my mother, and she'd say, another person, Mom, asked me, I can't believe it, I don't have time for this. Why? And she'd say, well, Beth, they're approaching you because they think they know you're a nice person. You'll probably say yes. And then I was like, oh, okay, there's that. Yeah, okay. But more practically, I think people have this idea that I know how to get jobs because I've gotten so many. But they also, they see my networks. On social media, I just, because I'm a natural networker, I have 6,000 connections on LinkedIn. I don't know most of those people. But, you know, the workplace is a place to get to know people. That's the fun of it. So visibility on both in networking with people in person, but also on social media. It's fuel in your tank to your next opportunities. And so I believe that it's something that even when you're not in transition, you ought to be doing as a practice. Because that's like money in the bank. And so when you need the help, and you need to be able to talk with a dozen people who can give you advice, and by the way, then they introduce you to the next person. It's a networking town. That's how Washington works, right? We're always doing this for other people. But it's something that you want to be doing when you're not looking, so that when you need the help, people are there to help you. And that's always happened to me. In fact, part of the benefit of being fired is people are so sympathetic. This is terrible, Beth. You know, of course I'll meet for coffee. And you know, that doesn't happen just because when you're just looking for a job. There's not urgency in other people's minds, but they all can relate to, oh my God, she lost her job. Of course we can meet that. So that constant networking. And helping people, right? Will you talk with my niece about IT? Yes. Take a half an hour, invite them into the office. You may not think you have time, do it. Again, money in the bank for when you need the help. Not to mention you're just doing a good turn for the universe, and that usually adds up. So I'd like to do an exercise with you, because when you're in transition, what you also want to be thinking about, or even before you're in transition, if you think you might ever be in transition, you don't want to do what I did a bunch of times, which is sort of go to the next thing for the wrong reasons, because that just like doesn't solve the problem. So I'd like to do an exercise with you, and for those of you who have had pens, maybe on the back of that great 40-plus pink sheet, you might take a note or two. Or whatever and does anybody need a pen? You need a pen. Just reach right in my bag here. Thanks, Lauren. And sorry we don't have like desks, but just do your best here. We're just going to write down a couple of words. So everyone shut your eyes. And just imagine like a beautiful place that makes you feel good. It's a beach, wind is blowing, and you're sitting by a fire. You're breathing in and out. You just want to relax. So what I'd like you to imagine is the perfect day at work, whatever that work or that day looked like. So think about, okay, you're waking up in the morning. What time are you waking up? Is it early? Is it 6? Is it 10? Is it noon? This is your perfect day at work. What do you want it to look like? Why don't you write that down? Think about, what's the commute like? Are you walking? Are you just walking down your stairs to your kitchen? Are you driving somewhere? What does a commute look like? Write that down. Where did you go? Are you in a city? Are you downtown? Are you in an office with other people? Are you in a co-working space? Do you like to be around people? Where did you go for this perfect day in the morning? Are you sitting in front of a fire? Are you sitting outside somewhere? Are you with your laptop, or are you in a garden center? Are you at Home Depot? I mean, what kind of an atmosphere do you like to be in that gives you energy? Maybe it's Starbucks. Write that down. Actually, if you think of a couple of different ones, more than one answer is okay. So then, what are you doing during this day? Are you writing? Are you talking on the phone? Are you having meetings? What feels good? Are you in an open office, or do you have your own office? How are you dressed? You like dressing in the morning, dressing up, looking spiffy? Or would you rather be wearing sweats? And then what are you thinking about during this work day? Is it big issues? Is it something technical? Do you like numbers? What activity of your brain makes it feel good? And write that down. Are you solving problems? Are you managing people? You like working with people, like building a team, like working with a team. These are things that give pleasure in work, depending on your personality. And then let's take a little time in that day for, okay, so you have an extra hour or two. Do you want to do some exercise? Do you want to take a lunch break? What does that look like? Or do you like to have lunch with people? Do you want to just take a walk? That's, could we have a volunteer or two to tell us what their perfect day looked like? Yes, please.
Hi, Shelley. It's my first time coming to these meetings. Thank you for being here. I love what you're sharing. My perfect day. I can't believe I'm sharing this, but I wake up at 6 a.m. I do not have a fireplace, but that would be awesome to have. But I would have my coffee or tea, and then I go for a walk. I would do that for an hour. Then I come back, shower. I work from home, virtually, office. I also would have the option, I did a multiple, I'd also have the option of having a co-worker space. I just visited the wing in Georgetown this last week, and it's amazing. So I'd like to be able to write that off on my taxes, I don't know yet what I want to do, but because I'm transitioning from a 20-year career, but something in the tech world. My biggest thing is to have life-work balance, no longer work-life balance, because that is just not real. And that's what serious where I'm at. And then also work with a team virtually, but also have the option of going into the office too, because I do like that social interaction. And yes, I would exercise during the middle of the day, and it would be Pilates, because I would have a job that I can afford to pay for. And I'd have lunch away from my desk, and I'd also get better at meditating, just breathing. So that would be my perfect day.
Excellent. That sounds like a wonderful day. Good for you, and you see it so clearly. So those are great clues. And I've heard the wing is fantastic. Interesting. Anybody else?
Can I share something?
Yes, please.
It only partially gives me the perfect day, but like about 2 months ago, I was laid off from my job. But always had the idea, was always looking about something that I personally could do. So I was kind of doing something, trying to network and develop an idea, for the networking event every week or two. But now that I've been laid off, it's like it's free. I can actually network, can try to, but I have got all the certifications needed for developing, working with QuickBooks and what have you. So I'm deciding, let me go ahead and go down that path. That's a bookkeeper. I already have my MBA, so I don't want to go back to school for CPA. But now I get to wake up at 5, go to the gym every other day, do research on things that I want to. And I'm just really having fun, though I'm not making enough money. Hopefully that will come later. But yeah, and I like the idea that I would be able to work from anywhere. So I'm not tied down to a particular location. Yeah.
That's a great point, Mike. And you're on to something here, and I'd just like to leave with a couple of statistics. And how are we doing on time?
Oh, you're fine.
Okay.
Take as long as you.
Okay, terrific. You read my mind, because there's a lot of evidence that this is the way the economy is going. And what we need to do as participants in the economy, because I don't know about you, but I want to make money and be able to do the things I want to do. But the workplace is evolving, and actually the people in this room, you're ahead of the game, because you're already thinking about it. And it's going to continue to evolve. And what we need to do as participants in the economy to be successful is just to work with the evolving landscape as it changes. What does that mean? Well, preparing yourself for this increasingly mobile, increasingly remote. By that I mean the options because of technology to work at home or work in a shared space and so forth. And to be ready for the increasingly transitory nature of the workplace. And I wanted to leave you with some statistics here. I was doing some research. So let's start with millennials because they're driving things. Who knows, and I think Jesse knows this because we talked about it this weekend, who knows, take a guess as to what percentage of the workforce millennials comprise? Any guesses?
35%.
That's right. Verna, go to the head of the class. 35%. It's the largest group in the workforce. Workforce is 157 million people. Millennials are 35%, over 50 million people. So, you know, that's why there are a lot of complaints about millennials in the workplace. They're dominant. They're so noticeable. And of course, they're driving the nature of the workplace and the nature of the evolution. And millennials, the average length of time that they have a job, and it has been going down, is how long do you think their average length of time in a job is?
2
A year.
It's a little longer than that still. It's interesting that everybody thinks that. It's 3.2 years right now. Now, you know, it's a statistic by somebody. But more to the view that you just expressed, when they asked millennials, what's the right amount of time to stay in a job, 2/3 of them said less than 2 years, and 1/4 of them said less than 12 months. So this is a whole new world, okay? And my hunch is that, you know, they're driving the entire nature of the workplace, so it's going to affect us and the way the workplace is, which is another affirmation that it's really good that you're here and really good that you're thinking about that. So let's go to the other end of the workforce, workers over 65. The number of people over 65 who are either working or looking for work has doubled since 1985, doubled. It's to 20%. So 20%, that's a lot of people. And the Bureau of Labor Statistics expects that 13 million Americans at 65 or older will be working by 2024. So that is changing too. People are working longer. That's a lot of people working past 65, which used to be an anomaly. It's becoming the norm. And this is interesting. The share of adults who are working who have at least a college degree, so this is educated workers over 65, has doubled also to 53% in 2019. In other words, of those workers, if you have a college degree, your numbers are rising even higher in terms of staying in the workforce. And the average income of those retirement age workers, the college educated ones, jumped by 63%. So the average income of college educated workers over 65 is $78,000. So think about it. That's decent money considering people used to be drawing down their retirement by that age. So what it tells us, I think, this combination of the millennials driving a more transitory workplace and people working longer because they want to, they need to, they want the money to continue to come in, and there's so many more options. Like the way you describe your perfect day at work, I mean, you might want to keep that going, you know, for a long time. Work is pleasant if we get to shape what it is, and we feel useful. Work lets you bring your talent and skills into the world, and people say thank you, and you help people, and it's energizing, it's pleasant. Oh, and you make money. So I think this is all a reason to be very optimistic about what's ahead if you're prepared for it. And you know, you may want to consider retooling. If you think about your career, I would say everybody in this room probably has at least 10 years of working time ahead of them if they want. If they want. So if you're thinking about your career in those terms, okay, I've got 10 or 15 years where I want to be working in some way and getting paid, and you know, I like people, I like to be around people. Well, if I'm thinking about my career for the next 10 or 15 years, getting a degree in coaching or IT support makes total sense. It's a really small investment. If you think about, look at all these 65-plus-year-olds making $80,000 a year that they're staying in the workforce. So to spend a few $1,000s retooling in something totally different, great investment. The key is to think back to that perfect day at work. And how do you want to spend your time? And the economy is moving in the direction that you can decide what that is. Do your networking, help other people. That's the key to making these transitions. And whether you're fired or you're fed up, it's going to be fabulous. So thank you very much for being here. That's, could we have a volunteer or two to tell us what their perfect day looked like? Yes, please.
Hi, Shelley. It's my first time coming to these meetings. Thank you for being here. I love what you're sharing. My perfect day, I can't believe I'm sharing this, but I wake up at 6 a.m. I do not have a fireplace, but that would be awesome to have. But I would have my coffee or tea, and then I'd go for a walk. I would do that for an hour. Then I'd come back, shower. I'd work from home, virtually office. I also would have the option, I did a multiple, I'd also have the option of having a co-worker space. I just visited the wing in Georgetown this last week, and it's amazing. So I'd like to be able to write that off on my taxes. I don't know yet what I want to do, but because I'm transitioning from a training career, but something in the tech world. My biggest thing is to have life-work balance, no longer work-life balance, because that is just not real. And that's what serious I've learned that. And then also work with a team virtually, but also have the option of going into the office too, because I do like that social interaction. And yes, I would exercise during the middle of the day, and it would be Pilates, because I would have a job that I can afford to pay for. And I'd have lunch away from my desk. And I'd also get better at meditating, just breathing. So that would be my perfect day.
Excellent. That sounds like a wonderful day. Good for you, and you see it so clearly. So those are great clues. And I've heard the wing is fantastic. Interesting. Anybody else?
Can I share something?
Yes, please.
It only passion that gives the perfect day, but like about 2 months ago, I was laid off from my job. but always had the idea, was always looking about something that I personally could do. So I was kind of doing something, trying to network and develop an idea, going to networking event every week or two. But now that I've been laid off, it's like it's free. I can actually network, can try to, well, I have got all the certifications needed for developing, working with QuickBooks and what have you. So I'm saying like, let me go ahead and go down that path as a bookkeeper. I already have my MBA, so I don't want to go back to school for CPA. But now I get to wake up at like 5, go to the gym every other day, do research on things that I want to. And I'm just really having fun, but I'm not making enough money. Hopefully that will come later. But yeah, and I like that I would be able to work from anywhere. So I'm not tied down to a particular location. Yeah.
That's a great point, Mike. And you're on to something here, and I'd just like to leave with a couple of statistics. And how are we doing on time?
Oh, you're 22.
Okay.
Take as long as you.
Okay, terrific. You read my mind, because there's a lot of evidence that this is the way the economy is going. And what we need to do as participants in the economy, because I don't know about you, but I want to make money and be able to do the things I want to do. But the workplace is evolving, and actually the people in this room, you're ahead of the game, because you're already thinking about it, and it's going to continue to evolve. And what we need to do as participants in the economy to be successful is just to work with the evolving landscape as it changes. What does that mean? Well, preparing yourself for this increasingly mobile, increasingly remote. By that I mean the options, because of technology, to work at home or work in a shared space and so forth. And to be ready for the increasingly transitory nature of the workplace. And I wanted to leave you with some statistics here. I was doing some research. So let's start with millennials, because they're driving things. Who knows, and I think Jesse knows this, because we talked about it this weekend, who knows, take a guess as to what percentage of the workforce millennials comprise? Any guesses?
35%.
That's right. Verna, go to the head of the class. 35%. It's the largest group in the workforce. Workforce is 157 million people. Millennials are 35%, over 50 million people. So, that's why there are a lot of complaints about millennials in the workplace. They're dominant. They're so noticeable. And of course, they're driving the nature of the workplace and the nature of the evolution. And millennials, the average length of time that they have a job, and it has been going down, is how long do you think their average length of time in a job is?
2 years.
2 years. A year.
It's a little longer than that still. It's interesting that everybody thinks that. It's 3.2 years right now. Now, it's a statistic by somebody. But more to the view that you just expressed, when they asked millennials, what's the right amount of time to stay in a job, 2/3 of them said less than 2 years, and 1/4 of them said less than 12 months. So this is a whole new world, okay? And my hunch is that, they're driving the entire nature of the workplace, so it's going to affect us and the way the workplace is. which is another affirmation that it's really good that you're here and really good that you're thinking about that. So let's go to the other end of the workforce. Workers over 65. The number of people over 65 who are either working or looking for work has doubled since 1985. Doubled. It's to 20%. So 20%. That's a lot of people. And the Bureau of Labor Statistics expects that 13 million Americans at 65 or older will be working by 2024. So that is changing too. People are working longer. That's a lot of people working past 65, which used to be an anomaly. It's becoming the norm. And this is interesting. The share of adults who are working who have at least a college degree, so this is educated workers over 65, has doubled also to 53% in 2019. In other words, of those workers, if you have a college degree, your numbers are rising even higher in terms of staying in the workforce. And the average income of those retirement age workers, the college educated ones, jumped by 63%. So the average income of college educated workers over 65 is $78,000. So think about it. That's decent money considering people used to be drawing down their retirement by that age. So what it tells us, I think this combination of the millennials driving a more transitory workplace and people working longer because they want to, they need to, they want the money to continue to come in, and there's so many more options. Like the way you describe your perfect day at work, I mean, you might want to keep that going, for a long time. Work is pleasant if we get to shape what it is, and we feel useful. Work lets you bring your talent and skills into the world, and people say thank you, and you help people, and it's energizing, it's pleasant. Oh, and you make money. So I think this is all a reason to be very optimistic about what's ahead if you're prepared for it. And you may want to consider retooling. If you think about your career, I would say everybody in this room probably has at least 10 years of working time ahead of them if they want. So if you're thinking about your career in those terms, okay, I've got 10 or 15 years where I want to be working in some way and getting paid, and I like people, I like to be around people. Well, if I'm thinking about my career for the next 10 or 15 years, getting a degree in coaching or IT support makes total sense. It's a really small investment. If you think about, look at all these 65-plus-year-olds making $80,000 a year that they're staying in the workforce. So to spend a few $1,000s retooling in something totally different, great investment. The key is to think back to that perfect day of work. And how do you want to spend your time? And the economy is moving in the direction that you can decide what that is. Do your networking, help other people. That's the key to making these transitions. And whether you're fired or you're fed up, it's going to be fabulous. So thank you very much for being here.
So after you've been pushed out or even outright fired and you go in for your next job interview, how are you dealing with that? Do you say it up front or?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked, Fred. Yeah, you need to have a story. There's your private story and there's your public story. And your private story, like, go ahead. I mean, it's ugly. And tell it to your family and your close friends. And, you know, like I called Lauren when I was, you know, when I was fired and my team had left the building. You know, you need your friends to say, they suck. they didn't get you. They didn't deserve you. You need to go through that. And you know, when I loved it, I remember applying for a job, and I really prepared, and I loved the interview, and I thought I'm going to get this job. Didn't get the job. What I really wanted to hear right then was, oh, they're stupid. They missed out. They didn't get you. They think they found a better candidate. Ha ha. You know, you need to hear that stuff from your peeps. But then there's also the public story. Nobody wants to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly. That you know that these transitions feel like. So, you know, when I was a headhunter, like people would tell us all kinds of stuff, like about their divorce and stuff. You know, keep it simple. All right. So you want to create a story that just kind of gets through whatever it was to the next topic of conversation. I was there 18 months, and you know, we realized that was about right, and we left on great terms, and now I'm looking for my next opportunity. It was a turnaround. I was there 18 months, and now I'm looking. It was great. They treated me very well, and now I'm looking for my next opportunity. You want to keep it kind of to a sentence, I think, and keep it simple. Everybody, every acquiring organization understands that things happen in the workplace, and you know, but they really, most of the time, they don't really want to know all the details. And headhunters definitely don't. Headhunters, they just want to like move you into the interview process. And much later, somebody might ask, well, what really happened there? But the truth is, you can never tell that story right. I mean, if you can just keep it simple, new boss, wanted his own team, I loved working there, and now I'm ready for what's next. I'm really excited. You want it to have that sort of positive arc that acknowledges that you left, but that doesn't get into like who shot John. Because the truth is, you can't tell that story accurately. So it's just my view is just better not to go there. Yes.
Okay, so you have that nice one sentence story, and you get through the interview process, and they want references from a previous employer.
Yes. Well, legally, you have to be really careful with that, and because the only thing that can really sink you once you get to the references stage is if somebody gives like a lukewarm reference, and that can sink you. Your references, you really want your references to be glowing people. And you know, if they want to speak with your past employer, frankly, I would choose someone at the previous employer who will give you a positive reference. And you know, if they insist on speaking to your previous boss or whoever fired you, then I think you need to say something. Look, honestly, that didn't end well, and it's not going to be a great review. But if you want a true measure of what I accomplished there, you know, I worked. So and so was another one of my bosses. I mean, you want to find somebody who was in a supervisory role or a senior role at the place. But chances are you do have people in a previous organization who will give you a positive reference, a colleague, or and so you really want to avoid among your references somebody who's going to give you anything but a glowing review. And I've thought about this, like you can have a really important person and in your references, but if they're not going to have the time to do the reference, or they wouldn't kind of give it that glowing thing, definitely choose the less well-known person or the more junior person who will give that glowing reference. Because the reference check in most jobs is it's kind of a victory lap. It's like this last thing. It's kind of like a background check. They've already decided they want to hire you, so you're like at the 10-yard line, and just make it glowing. And frankly, in a lot of jobs, they're not going to say, "Oh, was Greg your direct supervisor?" I mean, if Greg has the title of vice president and he's from your former company, you know, that a lot of times that's just fine. So and then in the case where they insist on speaking to your direct supervisor, number one, think about that, right? Because there needs to be, for you to be in a good place, they need to trust your judgment about, you know, who's able to give you an accurate reference. But number two, you may need to tell them, you know, my direct supervisor, I'm just going to tell you, she wanted me out of that job for a long time, and so I'm just telling you it's not going to be a positive reference. If you want to know what I really did there, what my colleagues thought of me, talk with Greg and Mary. Okay? Yes?
I just want to add on to that. That actually happened to my friend. She was trying to interview for a different position, and she noticed that she was having a bad time at her employer. But they called her supervisor just to said all kind of bad things about her. But
Yeah.
she didn't warn them beforehand about what she knew what he would probably say.
Yes, and you know that's really bad business. It sort of, because it's probably illegal for him to do that, but it does happen, and that's why on these online applications, when they ask in the computer for your references, only put people who you really want to get the call, and worry about whether it was your direct supervisor later. You know, you have wiggle room. A lot of us in jobs, we have layers of bosses. So I say get creative about that. Yes.
And for those busy executives, I know in some instances you can actually write your own review and send it to them, and they'll maybe edit it and sign it.
Yeah, some people have asked me, well, would you write me a reference letter? You know, because they're leaving, and that's probably a valuable thing to have, and it may sort of simplify the reference process. Thank you. Yes,
Yeah.
in the back. 1 second, Fred.
So, Beth, just back to her comment and concern, I would tell you that most companies today have a policy that they basically are going to acknowledge you work there, and that's the extent of it. Because they don't want to be sued if they tell you, if they give a prospective employer a bad reference and it's frankly not true, or other people can dispute that. So, the last couple companies I've worked for have made it very clear they'll only acknowledge the fact that you work there, and they will not provide any kind of reference on your work performance. So you do have to find that person. I think that's probably a better thing anyway.
Legally, I know that's the case. In reality,
Well, the couple I know, they definitely hold firm.
Well, and here's where it gets into that murky area. If a former boss wants to give you a bad reference, it's pretty easy to do without their actually saying something negative. They, you know, was Liz a, you know, how was she as an employee? Oh, she was all right. You're sunk. Liz is sunk. She was all right. Liz is sunk. And there's this sort of code language. So that's why, if there's any way possible, have references who will just sing your praises to the moon. And you know those people. And tell them you need them to do that. Yes.
One way around that is to find somebody who was your boss, who used to work at that company but is no longer there. And that's a way to get around that.
That's a great point. Fred?
Yeah, I wanted to add that sometimes when I'm asking for a reference from someone who wasn't my previous direct person, I'll say, and to jog your memory, I was there, we were together from X to X, and I did this project, and we won this award. And that way they have kind of some of the, I'm not writing the letter for them, but this is the material that they'll put in.
Well, I think that's a great point, because a lot of people are busy, and they, if you spoon feed them and really kind of care and feed them, like, Joe, I really want this job. I'm so excited. You know, they're gonna, first of all, you're asking, right? You're asking, is it okay if I use you as a reference? You always want to ask. I mean, just out of courtesy, it's sort of professional. Oh, sure. Yeah, I'll be a reference. Oh, thank you so much. Write them an email. Make sure they see it. I really want this job. This is what this job is. When, if you could talk about how I am really a self-starter and I'm a team builder, and that in this project we won that award. I mean, just basically tell them what to say. They'll probably appreciate it, because you're not forcing them. You're just making it easy for them. Myrna.
Are you writing a book?
Yes.
This is the best title ever. I already see this as a movie. And I mean, I see a screenplay. I mean, this is absolute. I think this may be it. After all this time, I think this is, everything has gotten to there.
I think I can quit now.
But you have to write it.
I'm writing it. It's actually, this is, for those of you who care, it's actually really easy to write. I've had so many experiences, and for those of you who are my friends, I'm so sorry you've been listening to this for so long, but it's so easy to write because I have a lot to say about it, and it kind of just flows right out of me.
It's the title. I mean,
and the graphic was designed by Katie Fisher right here.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, Myrna.
I was only going to say your style doppelganger could be Diane Keaton, even though she's older than you. But that is exactly how.
Oh my God! Now I really have gone to heaven. Fred,
I'm curious if it got easier to transition. If it got easier to think.
It does. It does, and something we didn't talk about today, but thank you, Bill and Myrna. We didn't talk today, but it's a part of this, and I'm going to write about it. What I call the Frugal Fabulous is that you want to be saving money when you are employed, like 10% of every paycheck, put it away, because what you don't want in these transitions is like the financial panic. Right, and you can avoid that by, they call it some people call it a rainy day fund, and they talk about like 3 months or 6 months. That's not enough. That's not enough. You want to be socking that money away so that you're building your financial security and your financial independence over the long term. Well, that's part of it, Katie, and then I'll.
Well, I was wanting you to mention some of the coaching opportunities or trainings to stay in touch with you.
Oh, thank you. Yes, see, I have to give her a raise.
I'm going to ask my boss for a raise.
On my website, I am starting to do individual coaching, and so we have one session called Career Navigator. I look at this as kind of navigating your career, and also one called, where the working title is Killer Networking, because a lot of people don't really like to network, but I want to help you make it fun and even go to a networking event with you, and so we do it together. So both of those are on my website. Thank you, Katie. Yes, you had a question.
Yes, please. One thing you said about asking for a raise that may have soured
the relationship, you know, because, you know, I've been independent creative, there's been a lot of turnover, and so finally, I have a new 25-year-old manager.
Oh, great.
Who knows nothing, and she has a new boss, you know, and I'm like, and they want to hire somebody else who would be at my level, and I'm like, look, you know, but she comes to me and says, I'm the program expert. So, of course, I asked for a meeting, because I am the program expert. I need to be paid. Here's what I can offer. I haven't heard back.
Right.
And, you know, I'm willing to, I'm just giving them the right of first refusal.
Right, right. So do you think that, what do you think is happening there? Like they're going to hire somebody sort of over you, or?
Who would be at the same level?
Uh-huh.
But, you know, it would be severe, I mean, we're severely underpaid.
Uh-huh.
You know, so they say, you want this job? It's like, no, I'm sorry, I cannot afford to take this job.
Right.
Right? So, yeah, so I made them an offer. But just what you said was about the thing about asking for a raise. You put yourself out there. Does it change the dynamic?
It can. I mean, I think in my case, it sort of, I think the way, and you know, we've all heard about this, that women aren't supposed to do, you know, that if a guy did it, it's received differently. I think that's true, but whatever it is, it's real, and I think that when I asked for a raise, they felt that like I was a little too big for my britches, kind of thing, and I do think it definitely factored into what then happened, which was, you know, my getting fired. It wasn't, I didn't do anything wrong by doing that, but as we all know, there are all kinds of subtle things going on in workplaces. So I think when that stuff starts to happen, and by the way, it's not just, I mean, this is happening all the time in the workplace, right? New manager hires somebody who's you don't think is necessary. That person might be a disaster. It might be great, but you are on the receiving end of a whole lot of decisions. And to the our friend who said, you know, who moved my cheese. I mean, it is constantly happening, and a lot of times they're not good decisions, but you have to live with it. So, you know, it's kind of, well, how do you navigate that? But because these decisions can also lead to an entire reorganization, I think you always want to be doing that cultivating of the garden, your networks. You're thinking about, what might I like to do if I had my choice of the perfect day and how to spend it, and how do I set myself up for that? It's never too soon to do that kind of thinking. Even if you end up staying at this job for 10 years, start your thing on the side. Start building it, whatever it is. Yes?
Yeah, so one thing I was going to add to, you're mentioning, sock away 10% of your income every month, for your rainy day fund. One other thing I would add, and what I have done in previous jobs, is continue to consult to the extent that they allow it, or to the extent that you can get away with it. I suppose whatever your circumstances may be, but have another income stream so that you can, work with unpredictable situations.
Yes. Great idea. Make it into a business. Yes.
So, in having been fired from this as the CEO of the nonprofit, that was a clear, black and white situation. How many of your firings have been more the writing was on the wall, and if you hadn't resigned, you would have been fired? Or is that, or?
So I sort of waited for the axe to fall, you mean?
Right.
Oh, well, that's an interesting question. We spend a lot of time when this happens, thinking back, when did it happen? When did it sour? Was it that I spoke up for the gal who said she was being harassed? Was that the death knell for me? I kind of think that it's sort of part of the way we torture ourselves, and it's kind of, it doesn't matter. Like, trying to figure out the logical reason it happened. I mean, it's useful. Just like, if you trip, and there was a thing in the sidewalk, like, you don't want to trip on it again. On the other hand, back to, it's not necessarily rational or right or logical what they did. And so I do think that sort of, it doesn't make sense to kind of like figure out what really happened, because sometimes it wasn't rational or right, and it wasn't your fault, and you may not ever really know. It was just the personal dynamics resulted in that. I also think, though, you're raising a good point, which is sometimes you can feel the toxicity. I mean, I've been in jobs where, and I was never fired, but people would say to me, Beth, you're going to be fired because your boss is going to be fired, and then you're going to be fired. And I remember that would go on for months. So sometimes that is part of the dynamic that might lead you to conclude, let me start my transition thinking now. Let me really ramp up the networking and all of that. And I was talking about urgency, the benefit of actually getting fired, that all your friends are like, oh, of course we can meet for coffee, how can I help? They sort of join you in the panic of it, and things start to happen fast. If you suspect that there's going to be a transition coming, I think it doesn't hurt to say to your friends and your networks, look, there's a lot of change going on in my company, and a lot of churn, or I think there's going to be a reorganization, and I want to get ahead of it. That's a way to sort of proactively get out there. But you can feel those, you can feel a lot of that stuff, and then the real torture is like the going quiet. Then when you don't hear anything for a while, and then you sort of suspect that you were on thin ice anyway. That's no fun. But again, these are just dynamics that have nothing to do with the quality of you. They're just helpful indicators. Sort of like, if you feel like if you're getting a sore throat, like take that vitamin C stuff before the cold sets in. Anybody else? Yes.
Okay, so when you find yourself in transition, what sort of things can you do to get through the grieving process and get into the next position? What 3 or 4 things would you be your first steps towards minimizing your time in transition?
Great question. So first, grieve. It's a loss. Grieve. Drink wine. Whatever, I mean, meditate, much healthier, thank you. But grieve. It's a loss. It's okay. Grieve. You just lost this sort of part of your life. Okay, so let that happen for, I would say, at least a few days. But it's going to be limited. And then you want to get sort of back on the positive track. So I'm a fan of like clean your house. Tackle some of those piles of stuff that are sitting around that you haven't dealt with. Little home improvement things that are easy to fix, that squeaking door, small things that make you give yourself a sense of accomplishment. Exercise, right? Okay, now you have time. Get out there and do good things for your body. Exercise doesn't have to cost anything, but now you've got time, do that for yourself. Part of what one needs to do in that transition, I think, is what I call feeding the spirit and also listening to your inner voice. We're so busy in our day-to-day jobs that a lot of times you really don't have time to kind of listen to yourself, like, what do I really like to do? What really kind of makes me feel good? Do I want to like pick up watercolor painting? You know, feeding the spirit is, bless you, and listening to what your spirit wants to do. I just want to sit outside and look at the river for a while. I just want to take a walk. I want to go to Home Depot and buy some nails. I mean, you want to really be kind to your spirit, especially, you're in a grieving process. Be kind to yourself and try to also be listening for that inner voice that gets drowned out when you're taking care of the kids and you're paying the bills and you're getting to work on time, and then you're driving to 5 soccer games and got to get to Costco. All that busyness drowns out that quiet inner voice, which is the real you. And the more you can hear that voice, the better decisions you're going to make on your next steps. So that's where it may not sound kind of what you would expect, but that's where I would sort of go to the hobbies. Yeah, that you're getting your resume, definitely your resume, you're making appointments to see people. Hey, Mike, yeah, I left company X. Yeah, there was a reorganization, and I'm looking at my next opportunities. I'm wondering if you could get together to just talk about the landscape. You've been at company B for 5 years, and everyone respects you. I'd love to get together if you could spare a half an hour. Definitely that. Definitely those practical next steps. But also this feeding the spirit. And I talked earlier about like the creative project. It's a blog, it's a website, it's a business, as you said. Starting up something that is creative and kind of brings out the best in you and gives you a positive thing to talk with people about. That too. So I would say doing those practical things, but also doing those softer, nourishing things to your spirit. That will not only get you back into a positive mind frame, but that's also, when you're sending out those positive vibes, that's what's going to attract people to you. And that's where the next opportunities are going to come from. By the time you get to the interview, you just want to be feeling good, and any kind of baggage from the last thing, like, you want it way in the background. It doesn't belong anywhere near that process, because those doors are opening for you and you want to walk through them in your best form.
Yeah, good advice. I think we, on that note, our time being up for the formal program, but we can all network, and then you'll be around to ask
Sure.
questions.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.